Have you seen the new Space Jam 2 Toon Squad uniforms? Plus, we're discussing all aspects of Indian representation in Hollywood. Get ready to blast off into the world of entertainment with Pop Culture Planet. Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of Pop Culture Planet. I'm your host, Kristen Maldonado, and this is your weekly destination for in-depth pop culture discussions. Each week, we'll be talking with some incredible experts, breaking down TV and movie news, and so much more. In this episode, I am so excited to have guru of all things beauty, makeup, and pop culture, Sarita Nauth, and the casual moviegoer himself, Ankit Verma, joining us. How are you guys doing today?
Hey, good. Thank you for having me.
I want to know a little bit more about your origins in the entertainment space. How'd you get started content creating, and where did your love of pop culture come from? So, Ankit, do you want to start first?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Kristen said, I'm the casual moviegoer. So I am on Instagram exclusively, and I do 60-second movie reviews. So that's kind of my bread and butter. In terms of how I got started on Facebook. Like I would write little Facebook statuses, after I saw a movie, try to make it fun and lighthearted and everything. And people seem to like it enough. So I was like, okay, let me try exploring this. So I started actually a Tumblr blog where I did movie reviews, like written movie reviews. And that it was fine. I wasn't too into it, but it was okay. But I actually started writing for a website called Dear Cast and Crew. That's sort of where I got more of my start, and they're like a pretty reputable site. They send you on press screenings, you get early advance tickets, all that kind of thing. Yeah, so I got the bug. I was like, okay, this I love doing. And then around that time is when Instagram really started bumping up their video content. They really wanted people to get on it. I was like, okay, so let me try that Instagram and YouTube thing. YouTube did not work out for me, I'll be honest. It was so competitive out there, and I had no idea what I was doing. I'd spend all weekend trying to edit a video, and I'd put it out, and I would get 2 views, and it was just so disheartening. I was like, okay, I don't know what to do here. So I did that for a bit. It wasn't working, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna try one last thing. Instagram wants video creators. I'm gonna try going on Instagram, and they had the 1-minute time limit. I was like, okay, that's an interesting creative exercise. So let me try that. And I went there and I did it, and knock on wood, it's taken off. People really seem to like the 1-minute format, especially my energy involved. And then, so I've just kind of grown from there. And as I've started doing this more, my love of movies has grown. I've discovered even more movies, and I've started sort of carved out that niche between more professional criticism versus what I'm doing, which I find is more accessible to general audiences.
Definitely. Now, do you find it difficult to cut down everything you want to say into 1 minute?
At the start, yeah, it was hard. But now I've kind of figured out my cadence, how I talk, so I can put that into effect. I know my word count, how many words I need to have to hit the minute. So it's gone better, but there's still times where I'll have something written down and I can't say it. I have to take it out. I went to school for advertising, and that was the one great advice from one of my professors was you have to kill your babies, which is a very morose way of saying don't get stuck on one idea. So if I have something and I really like it, I have to really look at it. I'm like, okay, this actually doesn't need to be here, and then I'll cut it out.
Well, that's awesome though that you're kind of creating sort of a new innovative space of film criticism on Instagram. I love what you're doing. I haven't seen as many people doing it in that way where, you have your 1-minute reviews and you have your your stars and bloopers and things like that. It's very fast paced and fun, and you get through the movie review very quickly. So it's do I want to watch this? Yes. Well, do I want to see this movie? No.
Well, honestly, that is the reaction I am going for, because I find film criticism itself is pretty flawed. And I know that's sort of arrogant coming from me as someone who's not professionally doing this or getting paid for it. I just find most professional critics write for other critics. They don't write for general audiences. Mm-hmm. So I really think there needs to be a space where people can actually, like you said, look at a review and decide, yes, this is worth my time and money, or no, it's not. That's at the end of the day, that's all they need to know,
Absolutely. Do you have any projects that you have coming up for your Instagram platform?
Right now, it's kind of, I'm in Canada, and in Canada, theaters have reopened. So that's sort of the big thing right now is I can actually go to the theater and see new releases. So Tenet would be the next big thing that's coming, which I know everyone has their eyes on. Other than that, big things happening. You know, I'm reaching like the 10K mark, which I know like is like the Instagram, the sign of, okay, like you're getting somewhere. I have some pretty fun things planned for the 10K. Like I have a giveaway ready. I'm actually fortunate enough to be working with Extra Butter, which is a cinema-inspired streetwear store in New York, where you guys are.
Oh, cool. So what is that like? A cinema-inspired streetwear store?
Yeah. So they just randomly reached out to me one day. Like one of the co-founders, he watches my videos. And yeah, like they've been featured on Complex and Hypebeast, and like they had Chris Brown to their store for an episode of Sneaker Shopping. Wow. Yeah, so I saw their name, I saw the little like blue icon, and I was like, whoa, what's happening here?
That's awesome.
Yeah, so kind of around the time the pandemic started, you know, that Netflix party Chrome Hangout came out, where you could watch Netflix with other people. So that's pretty much, I like twice a month we'll host like a movie night, a virtual movie night, and I'm sort of the host of it. So, you know, their followers come, my followers come, and we just watch a fun movie on Netflix. So they've agreed with the giveaway to give away actually a swag pack.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so if any of my followers are watching this, help me get to 10K, because there's going to be some good stuff planned. Yeah. And I have a few other things in the gun.
That's so exciting. All right, Sarita, we are back with you. How you doing? Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, your content creation, and also your love of pop culture and entertainment?
Yeah, I mean, I got to hear most of what Ankit was telling about his story. Honestly, that sort of passion definitely that reminds me a lot of my passion when it comes to entertainment and pop culture and film. I wanted also to do the, you know, YouTube stuff, and that didn't work out for me as well. So I am strictly Instagram myself. But I started off in fashion and beauty. And after years of going to see celebrities and going to red carpets and going to all these things that I just sort of fell in love with, I realized that I really wanted to be in entertainment. But I also really wanted to be in film and beauty and everything like that. So I said, why not combine the two? So a lot of what I do during the day is around reality TV over at VH1. And then during the night and most of the day, I spend it doing beauty and primarily just sort of trying to mix the two and trying to make those two things come together. So over the course of the years, it has been really hard to try to sort of find my niche, but where I can mix my love of television and film with beauty has always been the things that I love to do the most. So it's definitely really exciting that as the platforms develop and they grow, I've been able to find my niche and things that work for me. So that way I can be able to mix these two things that I love together.
Yeah. And I mean, as you can see, Sarita's got beautiful blue eyes. She is a makeup guru. And do you, I know you have some projects going on your Instagram right now. I don't know if you would be able to share a little bit of what you're working on.
Yeah, so I have a few things that I'm working on. Something that I recently did that I'm very proud of is my show called Black Girl Beauty. It's about basically bringing representation with basically bringing attention to the fact that the beauty industry doesn't really pay attention to Black beauty influencers and sort of Black women and their contribution to that industry. So where I was able to use my power and privilege to say, hey, I really want to do this show, why don't I make this a digital series? So that was something I was really proud to do with VH1 to sort of bring attention. It's something that I hope that in the future I will continue to do that for brown women. You know, as I started to do the series, I said that how, well, there are more women that I want to bring into this. There are women who have their own journeys with colorism, and something that we're going to talk about a lot more later. But it definitely inspired me to say, hey, like, I really, really want to bring these two, that's the first stepping stone of me bringing those two things together. I do have a lot more projects coming up with other beauty influencers, but part of using my power and privilege was getting connected with a South African beauty audience, because I didn't realize that most of South Africa are Indian women. And it was really important to me to bring beauty access there. So over the course of the past year and a half, I have been working with my friends to ensure that beauty access and products have been able to been promoted and, given to women who haven't really been in that, they don't have access to them in their own life. So it's been really important for me to work on that.
That's awesome. Very awesome.
Yeah. I was in South Africa earlier this year, And
Wow.
I was in a hole in the wall restaurant, and I looked behind me, and there was Bollywood playing on the TV.
Yeah, it's the
Wow.
largest population of Indians outside of India. I did not know that until my friend, who is South African, she's Indian, and we always talk about Bollywood stuff. And when she got married, it was a huge Indian wedding in South Africa, and I was just like, I did not know this entire world, and it's just a beautiful thing.
Nice.
That's awesome. Very, very cool. All right, guys. So let's move on to our main topics. We're gonna start off with some of our, news in TV and movies this week. So the first topic that I want to get into is a little bit more of a fun one. There is a new Toon Squad uniform for the upcoming Space Jam 2. You can see what it looks like right over here. A comparison of the original, which was white and blue with like the little Toon circular logo in the middle, and now with LeBron James modeling this new version that's like turquoise, the little like kind of centerpiece is kind of off to the side. What are you guys thinking about this this new logo, and are you excited for the new Space Jam movie that's going to be coming out soon?
I don't know who would like.
Yeah,
so
no, go
you want
for
to start?
No, I think the outfit's really, really cool. Like, I like how they bumped up the color, and already you can tell by the background he's walking against that this movie's probably going to be a lot more colorful and then a lot more leaning towards the like cartoonish aspect. I'm definitely excited to see what it's like, but I am also hesitant. Like Space Jam is a movie fueled by nostalgia. I feel like if I watch it now, I won't like it as much. So I'm really interested to see how this new movie strikes that balance between this is meant for kids, but it's also supposed to attract that audience who grew up with the original,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of like if it's not broken, then don't fix it. It's sort of thing. I mean, it's oftentimes you see reboots that they put a lot of money into it, and it looks pretty and it looks nice, and then it's just like it's not the same wow effect. It's not the same memories that you have attached to it. So I think it's a cute outfit, but I also am a little reluctant myself.
Yeah, well, especially like kids don't really watch Looney Tunes anymore. I don't think, at least. Like when I was a kid, it was huge. Like I didn't really watch it for Michael Jordan. I watched it because of Bugs Bunny and Donald Duck. But I don't think that's really the case anymore with kids nowadays.
That is very interesting because I feel like there are certain franchises, or like the Muppets or Sesame Street, that people still are watching now. Whereas like Looney Tunes, that is one where I know that I'm pretty sure they came out with a new HBO series like this year, like just a few weeks ago. But I don't know if it's really like something that people are watching, or that young people are like super excited about. I think it's maybe more of nostalgia for people our age, that are a little bit older and grew up with it. But I will say, I kind of don't really like this new uniform that much. I think it's a little bit ugly. That's just my opinion. I thought the original ones were so iconic. They're simple, but I thought they were iconic. These ones feel a little bit like they're trying to do too much to me. But that's just my thoughts.
No, that's fair. It's
that's fair.
Yeah.
All right. So for our next topic, Jensen Ackles is going to be joining the cast of The Boys season 3 as a new character called Soldier Boy. I don't know if you guys are a fan of The Boys or if you've checked it out, but this character is supposed to be kind of like a parody of Captain America in a way. And I don't, if you've seen The Boys, you know that they are very extreme. So I think that this is going to be a really interesting role for Jensen Ackles. What do you think, Sarita? I know that you watch Supernatural, and the creator of Supernatural also works on The Boys. So I'm not sure if you're excited for this.
Yeah, I've kind of dabbled a little bit in The Boys. I didn't really get into it too much, but I really do like Supernatural. I missed a few seasons of it, but I think it'd be pretty interesting, to see him in a sort of more comedic light, because I know the show is very, has a lot of like humor.
Yeah,
so,
like dark comedy.
Dark comedy. That's the way to put it. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
What about you, Ankit?
I mean, I loved season 1 of The Boys. So,
Me too.
I mean, I'm surprised they already announced season 3 casting. That means they're very confident what's going to happen with season 2. But I really like this casting because I think it's been confirmed. Like Jensen Ackles was in the running for Captain America before Chris Evans came on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I
That's
think
fun.
this casting is sort of like a giant, like a fun little FU to Marvel, which kind of is the whole concept of The Boys, you know, making fun of superhero genre in general.
Mhm.
No, I'm excited, and I know probably the geek community is too, because I know Jensen is like the #1 guy for every single fan casting. Like,
Yeah.
new Batman coming out, we want Jensen. Like Red Hood, Jensen. It's all, I always see his name popping up, so it's kind of nice that he's probably getting into the superhero realm. And
this is exciting because I feel like we mostly see him in Supernatural. Like, he hasn't really been doing that many other projects. You know, they've been on Supernatural for what, 11, 12 seasons now or something.
Is the show still on?
Yeah, it's just ending.
Yeah, it's
year.
still on.
The finale is like it was supposed to come out this year, but because of the pandemic, it got delayed. So I think there's literally like 2 episodes left or something, and then So this is gonna be his next big project. I'm excited.
Yeah. I will say, I've wanted to say this publicly. I find Homelander from The Boys is like one of the most entertaining characters in like TV history. I don't know if you agree, but I love him.
Terrifying. He's like one of those characters that you're just like, I would never want to meet him in real life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love what he's done with the character. Like, honestly, I just, even like through movies, other TV shows, I'm like, he is so entertaining, so engrossing. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, let us get into our next news topic. This is something that just came out, I think, today, which I found really interesting, which is this news report about a study of women in television and film that was published through the Thumbs Down report about gender representation in film criticism. So I'm not sure if you guys got a chance to check out this article, but they basically were talking about how right now men outnumber women as film reviewers in the US almost 2 to 1. There's like 65% of film reviewers are men and 35% are women. They also talked about how both men and women of color are drastically underrepresented in the film community, with 70% of film reviewers that are female being white and 23% being women of color, and 73% of male reviewers being white and 18% men of color. And that a large portion of films reviewed by women feature a female protagonist, and that that women are covering more films directed by women. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that, and maybe what can be done to kind of rectify that. Because taking a look at the stats for this, women last year only accounted for 34% of film critics, and now it's 35%. So it only went up 1%. It's pretty low. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts.
Mm-hmm. I'll let Sarita start because this is our topic. I should be talking about.
I mean, I wanted to let you start because you're definitely more so in film review, critic space. I mean, honestly, the person who I admire the most in the space is Kristen, because I've seen her sort of channel grow, and I've seen the process in the back end. It's not an easy process. It's the same thing where it's hard to really define, because there are so many different reasons why so many different women don't really want to go into this space. In my personal opinion, I think it's because of sheer criticism in movies or films or franchises in which are male dominated, and there aren't even women in those spaces. So women often feel like they can only speak to the Black Widows or the other female Captain Marvels of the world, versus actually speaking about the films as a whole, because they feel like they get criticism from their male counterparts, because there's often the stigma that women are supposed to like makeup and fashion and everything like that, and there's not to really the most educated on male-centric things like superheroes and cars and all these different things. I think that there is a lack of confidence for that, and that's the reason why, as a film industry progresses with more female-led directors, writers, just everything female-driven and led, and there's more equality in that industry, hopefully it will help spearhead more equality in the film critic, industry.
Absolutely. I think you make a lot of great points, Sarita. Like the more people that we have behind the scenes, on camera, then the more people that we can have kind of in all the different spaces, in criticism, producing, writing, directing. And I do think that it makes a lot of sense that there are times where, maybe it feels like, well, you know, if I speak out about this specific film, like, will it feel like I don't have like the credentials to do that, you know? And also just like, for me, I feel like some of it is more about just like getting out there, you know, like I think that there are a lot of times where I've seen, you know, let's say, you know, in the film criticism space, people working together, and it's always the same types of people. And, you know, that's like a big part of why I wanted to create this podcast, was because I wanted to be able to specifically bring on people that I feel like are not always represented in this space. Like as a Latina, you know, having on other women, other people of color, people with different backgrounds and different voices, like, and I think being able to like stand up and help people do that, like, can make a difference, you know, and hopefully in a couple of years we'll be able to see a change in these numbers. What do you think, Ankit?
No, you both bring up very good points, especially about the kind of just the upbringing of like I love a movie should translate race, gender, and all that stuff, you know. But if I were to ask anyone, picture a film critic in your head, they're most likely going to picture an old white dude with like thick rimmed glasses, you know. And I don't think that's just a coincidence. I think that's just because majority of the film critics out there are those people. And I don't know. I don't know how to rectify it. All I know I can say is diversity is so important in that sense, because as much as people don't want to admit it, when they've grown up a certain lifestyle, they're just going to have certain perceptions, you know? Like, I remember when I was born in India, but I moved to Canada when I was very young. But I remember when I started watching Hollywood, like North American media, my first initial instinct was, this stuff is so boring. Because I grew up in Bollywood with like song and dance and colors, and it was like dramatic, you know, it was theatrical. Obviously I've grown from that, and now I appreciate all different genres. But that's just, I grew up a certain ways. I was raised a certain way, so I perceive different movies. Like I perceive movies in a different way, and I think that's why that diversity is so important. Because if you have a whole flock of people who are the same, who are just reviewing the same type of films, like you're going to get the biases regardless. And it's the same conversation that's happening with like the Oscars voting academy. It's majority white, so you don't get people like Lulu Wang nominated for Best Director when she made The Favorite, which was, pun intended, one of my favorite movies from last year. You know, like there are a lot of benefits just to diversify. But honestly, I don't know how that would rectify, because it'll cause a lot of tension. But yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is people coming together. You know, like, look at us coming together, talking about film and television, and, you know, bringing awareness. You know, I guess it's things like that so that we can all talk about these topics and make them, you know, normalize talking about all these different things about, you know, representation and inclusion and diversity and Great points, guys. Great points. And last up for our news topics, we are going to talk about the Patriot Act, which was hosted by Hassan Minhaj, that has been canceled by Netflix. This was a talk show that went on for 6 seasons, diving into, you know, politics, news, and very timely cultural and political moments. It ran for 39 episodes, and this was a unique show for Netflix because it was live, like, or not live, but like each week they had to do a new episode because, you know, you had to be really timely. So did you guys watch the show? Were you surprised by its cancellation?
I watched it. I loved it. Yeah,
I'm huge fan.
I think it's a huge mistake, honestly. If they can have Orange is the New Black on for many seasons and just be the same sort of storyline, and if they can have so many other shows that are actually newsworthy on air that don't get down to nitty gritty and in digestible ways that Hassan makes it for this new age of this new generation, I think it's a miss. Honestly, another network needs to pick it up, just do the same exact format, because honestly, you're not buying into the format, you're buying into the person. And it's a huge disappointment to see him go from the Daily Show and work his butt off in there and get this representation, because you don't see, you know, Indian men who are like newscasters that are in American, you know, politics. And I think that is just a wasted opportunity, that it's their loss, really.
Yeah, I was very upset when I heard this, like extremely upset. Like every week I would watch this episode, and I would post a story of myself watching it, and I would always do hashtag Brown Boy Sundays. Like I was into it. Like Hassan is a huge inspiration for me, and like anyone who's seen my videos and they've seen him work, you can tell like I mimic a lot of his mannerisms, the way I talk, the way I move my hands, and his energy. Like I really try to bring that into my work. But yeah, like as shocked as I am it got canceled, I'm not that surprised, because I know Netflix has canceled all of their talk show formats, like every single one. Joel McHale, Chelsea Handler, who was the other one? Michelle Wolf. Like all those shows were canceled. So I don't know if the format just doesn't work with Netflix. All I know is when Hassan would put something out on YouTube, his numbers were like matching John Oliver. So maybe it's a matter of, you know what, he has the recognition now. He should just continue it on YouTube. Like his last few episodes were done during the pandemic. It was a green screen and him and like a few and like animation work. But I feel like he should just continue on YouTube and monetize his videos and just like, you know, really get there with the people and just do it on a social platform rather than a big juggernaut like Netflix, who just relies on data to make all their decisions.
Yeah. Definitely. That's a good point. I did not realize that all the talk shows got canceled, so they must be going in a different direction. You know, it looks like Netflix has been trying a lot of different things lately. I mean, they had all those reality shows earlier this year, and they're trying different things with, you know, how often they drop episodes and how many they drop at a time. But that's really interesting to hear how Hassan Minhaj like really inspired you and your work. Could you talk a little bit more about, you know, why he is someone that you really look up to, or why he inspires you?
I mean, it is the reason that he is an Indian man on the spotlight for Hollywood, you know, like, and I know we'll talk into it later on, but all the stereotypes that I'm used to seeing, he was a guy who was well-spoken. He didn't have a thick accent. He was talking about topical stuff like current events happening around the world. He was educated and he was funny and he dressed well. They were just like, he was a more of an accurate representation of like Indian men that I know versus what I've seen. And yeah, I don't know. I personally, I liked his stuff. Like, I think he's very intelligent. I think he's very smart. His video with 10 friends where they're going shopping together.
Yeah,
like I've watched that so many times. Like I generally do find him funny. So it's not just the color that I'm into. I like his stuff, but yeah, it was that barrier that he broke, which really was inspiring to me.
Absolutely. I remember watching one of his more recent comedy specials on Netflix, and the way that he weaved in, it was like a journey that he like weaved in comedy, but also these like very relatable and like at times like darker moments that I felt like when I finished it, I was like, wow, like I just went on a whole journey, and I felt like there was like highs and lows, and like you really like experienced his story, the stories that he tells through his comedy. So yeah, he's very, very talented. And I guess getting, you know, jumping off of that, let's get into our main topic, which is Indian representation in Hollywood. And now, since Ankit, since you mentioned someone that you were really inspired by, is there anyone, Sarita, or any projects that that really inspire you in terms of like Indian representation, or that you really connect with?
Okay, that is a really loaded question, and I feel like I'm being lit by a fairy light right now. So I really want to turn on my light in my room.
Good. Go, girl, go.
Because I looked at the live stream and it says that I look like completely unparalleled. Okay, so for sound bites, to make sure that we're all good and clean. So, Indian projects or representation that I've seen currently that really have inspired me. It's honestly, you know this because you know me personally. Lila in the Umbrella Academy has been someone who I absolutely love. But she is not the person who really spearheaded sort of this. I don't know how to describe it. Like, I think the only place that I can start is with Mindy Kaling, because Mindy is someone who is, you may or may not like her acting, but you cannot deny that she was not iconic in The Office. You can't deny that her pure existence in media, being short, brown, everything about her and her unapologetic comedy and style and sass was completely opposite than what you see in Bollywood. And there's so much that I can talk about there. So once you get me started, there's no way to shut me up on this topic. But I will say, if we want to get to this, she definitely is someone who, her projects and seeing what she does consistently, especially with Never Have I Ever, those sort of projects is something that I definitely currently love and like. And I think that is a great way and move forward for Indian representation in current film and media.
Absolutely. Now, what is it about Never Have I Ever that you particularly enjoy, Sarita? I know that's a new one that just recently came out.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot, because I know that when you came to me with this topic, we were on a tangent on all these different sort of representation that I've been seeing recently that makes me happy compared to the representations that we've been seeing in the past. And I will say that this show, what I like about it, granted, there were some flaws, and I felt like there could have been better ways for the show to have been, just a better as a whole, as a show in general, less versus an Indian representation. I think that for me, it was seeing this Indian girl that is exactly how Ankit, talks about Hassan. It's about not having that thick layered accent and being, so her relationship with her culture is something that's so much just a part of her versus something that's shoved down your throat, which oftentimes it always is when you are seeing a young brown girl in a very white setting. So I think that her overall existence and sort of normalcy in the show, and her just being a normal brown girl, and this is just a part of her culture, this is how her parents are, this is how her cousin is, that sort of thing, it just makes me feel good, because how other people see my culture is something that makes me feel good, because it's not stereotypical.
Mm-hmm. Ankit, have you checked out the Never Have I Ever or any of Mindy's shows?
No.
We recommend it. It was really good.
I mean, it's a cute one-off watch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't watch Indian Matchmaker, and then I saw that we were going to talk about it, so I was like, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. And then I watched it yesterday, and now I'm almost done. Like, I'm into it. I'm into it. That
I really want your opinion on, because that is, there's so many layers to that is something, I think, out of everything you mentioned, Kristen, that is like takes the cake, because it's what's happening right now, and it's definitely a lot to digest there.
Well, let's get into it, since we've all watched it. To me, I was very interested to kind of get into this culture, because I didn't really know too much about this Indian matchmaking culture. I think it's something that, again, we've seen in stereotypically in shows and movies. So I'm curious to see what did you guys think about the show, and specifically how they tackled certain things like classism and colorism, because I think that's something that is kind of mentioned subtly throughout the series. So I don't know if you want to start, Sarita, since I know you definitely have a lot of thoughts.
There's multiple areas in this show that, first I started off fighting about somebody on Twitter about it, because it was the only way to really dive into it, because I saw Twitter's reaction before I watch a show. So normally you always go to Twitter, or you go and see what everyone else is saying before you actually give something your own take. And what I reacted to on Twitter versus how I actually felt by watching all of the episodes was completely different. I started off sort of going into the show realizing, like, I know that Indian matchmaking is a thing. I grew up in Guyana. Well, I was born in Guyana, South America. I was raised in Belize, Central America, and then I moved to Atlanta, New York for most of my life. So as I get older, my heritage and my sort of culture, being an Indo-Caribbean woman, has never been the same journey as my friends who are actually from India. So it's been similar, but it's not the same, because I look Indo-Caribbean, or I look like a different ethnicity, but I don't look like my sisters who actually do look like Indian passing. So it's kind of weird culturally, because in the show in Indian matchmaking, you see a girl named Nadia, who is someone who I relate to, because she is Guyanese. She tries to hold on to her culture, but she's more American than anything. So but she knows that her ancestry and she knows that culturally matchmaking is a thing, and she wants to give it a chance and see how that can go, and sort of have that, her holding on to her culture and try to preserve it was something that was super important to me. But then as I started watching the show, I said, what I love about is that there's modern takes onto it. There's women that you see who say that I don't want to be just a regular housewife, I want to have a career. And there's guys who will listen to their parents or listen to their mothers and have to pieces. And I feel like, Ankit, you'll have a lot to say about the guys in the show. But as far as the girls in the show, definitely took me for a surprise because people really hated her name is escaping me, but it begins with a Aparna. So people really hated Aparna. And while I say she has a lot of flaws, I will say towards the end, I kind of understood where she was coming from. But in the long run, her journey as like her journey and influence, like many other women, like she's light-skinned Indian, and we can talk about colorism a lot more because that is a whole thing on its own. The way that they don't say white, they don't say white, they say fair and lovely. Fair and lovely, and it's never dark and lovely. It's never. One thing I will say, which I'm sure someone will have something to say about, is that you will not find a light-skinned, poor Indian person in India. Because culturally, being fair and being light-skinned is always put up on a pedestal culturally. And for someone like myself who discovered my Hinduism and my religion late in my life, being dark was always something I just found beautiful. My mother's very fair, my dad's dark, and I said I'm sort of mixed, but I'm still Guyanese. And the more that I look into my heritage and realize my ancestors from India, and they came on this boat, and the country that I come from, I'm just like, there's nothing wrong with my skin color. So why is it that in 2020 or 2019, this show is basically saying that I still prefer someone fair? Because regardless of how good she is at anything, her fairness means more than anything. That is something that that didn't sit right with me, because it was a through line in the whole entire show. You have to be Indian and brown to sort of pick it up, especially towards the end. I don't know if you got to the last episode, Ankit, but.
No, I'm 2 episodes away. So whoever gets to 2 will tell me.
No spoilers here.
Like I agree with everything you said. I actually am a child of arranged marriage. My parents are arranged.
Interesting.
I'm happily married for many, many years. My mom's one criteria was he needs to have a mustache. And my dad had a nice, like, thick, beefy mustache, so he was in. So that's why I was intrigued by the show, is because I wanted to see how they portrayed arranged marriage, because I was worried that it would come off as what a reality of it actually is. It's very transactional, right? It is very much not, oh, you two are going to spend your life together and fall in love. It's like, he's rich, you need money, get together, make us proud. Like that is really a lot of the mindset with arranged marriage. So that is one positive of the show, I will say. I like that they are treating it as a love story. It is about people who are lonely, they've been through some shit, and now they're like ready to settle down, and they haven't had much luck. So this is an opportunity for them to find somebody that they can spend the rest of their lives with. So I like that. It does have sort of that Bollywood love story feel to it. But yeah, it's a lot of that cultural things about saying stuff like, oh, she's fair, she's tall, she's slim. Since I grew up in India, I can see that stuff and I'm like, oh yeah, that's people there, But I'm worried people who don't grow up with that, they look at that and they're like, oh man, India's like, people are so rude there, So that's the one thing with the show I'm worried about, is how it's being perceived by other people who didn't grow up with that culture. Is it a joke? Is it something interesting? Is it detrimental? Is it positive? That's what I'm more curious about.
Yeah, these are people's real lives. It's always that one thing in the back of your head, because for me, I don't see a lot of Guyanese or Indo-Caribbean representation in film or media. So seeing someone like Nadia, who I know all my friends who are Guyanese are like, oh, did you see Nadia? I was like, yeah, like she's she's in Queens, she's buying bread at this place that I buy bread from here. Like that sort of stuff was just like, and she doesn't have a thick Guyanese accent. She has a normal job that most Guyanese parents who are traditionally Indian would describe as not a money-making business. But it's kind of funny because she is in weddings. She is an event planner. So it's very funny because when you see other people, you kind of want to be like, what are the white people going to think about my culture? Like,
right, exactly.
Indian culture isn't always like, it's so colorful, it's so pretty. Like every time I have an Indian outfit on or do Indian makeup, someone's just like so fascinated by my culture and what I do. But it's just like, you don't understand the climb and the sort of struggle that it takes to sort of have people understand that there's so many layers to your culture that not many people understand, and having the right representation is a huge factor in it all, because there's everything down to stereotype, from the accent to the sort of the look and feel. I don't want my daughter thinking that Priyanka Chopra is the epitome of only Indian beauty, because it's not. You know, like it's not. God. It really isn't. You know, and it's something that you sort of. I mean, no disrespect to her. I honestly, you know, I think that she's a very beautiful woman, and I think that how her sort of journey into mainstream media. I was watching her when she was the Desi girl and just got on the scene, but even in Bollywood films, growing up, I never saw anyone in Bollywood films that looked like me. I think you probably still find boys now that look like Ankit, but you'll never find girls that look like me. You'll never find an Indian girl who has curly hair, who is dark, who is the main star, who is being, pursued by the hunky, Indian guy, or even the nerdy guy, or even any of that. You will never really see that. And it's hard because the girls in India right now who are unfortunately being raped and being kidnapped and being taken away are the girls who are dark. And it really breaks my heart. It makes me really emotional, because if Indian culture and media and representation, especially in Hollywood, is uplifting the same thing that Bollywood does, which is the lighter skinned girls and the girls who are beautiful and fair and have because of colonization or because their parents shipped them off to Europe at a young age, has like green eyes and dark hair but fair skin. If they think that that's how Indian women are, then what happens to the everyday girl, the billions of Indian women who look just like me or darker skin than me and have straight hair and just are beautiful? What happened to them? What, they're throwaways? They don't mean anything because they're caste, like the fact that the caste system still exists. I don't know about you, Ankit, but like, how did your parents ever explain sort of the caste system to you, or was it like, were your parents of the same caste, or was that a thing?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but it was never explained to me, and I left India when I was very young. I was 5 when I left, so I have been fortunate enough to be raised in Canada, so I don't have that way of thinking. But no, I've never been raised that way, but when I hear about it, it's shocking to me, because I'm like, man, I have like 1 degree of separation from this, and there are people back home who like, they'll look at some people and they literally call them untouchables. That's how low in the caste they are. Like you're not even treating them as human, and like, to me, that's out. Like, it boils my blood, to be honest.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, and to your point. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go, please. Please.
No, I was just gonna say, like, to your point about like the colorism, like it has an effect. Like Hassan Minhaj mentioned this in one of his last videos, but a lot of South Asian people are racist towards Black people. It's a reality, and a lot of that has to do directly with how they've perceived dark Indians, and they've just applied that same hate to like a completely different group of people just because they're just seeing that color. So it is good to have these conversations about colorism, because people don't think it matters too much, but it actually matters a lot more than they think.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because when the Black Lives Matter movement really picked up heat in here in the US a few months ago, and obviously it still was a thing, one of the biggest things, and some of the media outlets that I've been following that are spearheaded by Guyanese or like West Indian women basically were like, what about Indo-Caribbean subtle, like, and even in Indian households, how it's subtle racism is sort of implied, like being Black isn't beautiful, being African American, being all of those things are not something that you should associate or align yourself with. It is a very scary, dark truth. And if you ask any Indian or Indo-Caribbean person, that is, Indian, they would tell you the same thing, that they grew up here and these stereotypes in their household, and they don't really want to perpetuate that. Because for me, my family, and I think I mentioned this to you, Kristen, when I was creating Black Girl Beauty, I was sort of on the fence, because I said how I'm not Black, but I'm a brown woman, and growing up my whole entire life, I've been called Dougla. And Dougla is a term basically used to say that you are mixed with Black and Indian, or Indian and Black person mixed, and it's not a compliment. And in Guyana, I never grew up there, but all of my family members have always called me that because I have a larger nose, I have bigger lips that are natural, and then my hair. So I never really looked Indian and Indian enough. And I think even Nadia mentioned that in Indian matchmaking, she said not being Indian enough was something that was sort of traumatic, growing up, the not hearing that your skin color is not beautiful enough. And even for like South Indians, like I'm almost positive that my South Asian heritage and my ancestors are Dravidians from South India that were put on a boat because they said that you're dark skinned, and we have slaves from Africa too, and we're just going to put them all together because your color, even your own people is saying that your color isn't beautiful. So if your own people in North India are saying that how your skin color isn't beautiful and you're untouchable, then we'll treat you the same way too. And it is very, very hard because there's like the Black Lives Matter movement in film and media. We have a lot to do to also be allies for ourselves, but also for other, minorities and other people in our culture. And it's something that we need to change.
You bring up some really, really, really great points. I don't even want to interrupt you guys because I feel like you're in such a good mode of just bringing up all these really great topics. We're checking off everything on the list to go through. And I think you guys bring up some really great points. And I really found what you mentioned, Sarita, fascinating of not feeling insert background ethnicity enough. I know that's something I've definitely felt as a Hispanic woman because I don't speak Spanish. And, people are always like, what? And I wonder, especially when we're looking at, I guess, sort of Hollywood representation of Indian people versus Bollywood representation of Indian people, and trying to find that balance of where do you kind of fit in. I know something on Keith that we had mentioned before was kind of the stereotypes of the awkward guy in Indian culture, or just how do you think that you sort of find that space to, I guess, represent people in a way that's actually positive, there are so many times where we're seeing, it's do we just take whatever representation we can get? How do we figure out, I guess, where we fit into all of that?
Yeah. So no, I'm glad you brought that up because I have some good examples for that. So I find the way to stop it is just stop being a dick, in layman's terms. This stereotype of the awkward, sexless Indian male, it's purposeful. They do it on purpose because it's funny to them, it's Raj Koothrappali from Big Bang Theory. I can't talk to girls for the first half of the show, they do that continually, but they don't have to. And a perfect example of that is Dave Patel, so his movie that was supposed to come out this year, which I'm very upset COVID has halted its release, was The Green Knight. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you guys have heard of it or seen any trailers for it.
Yeah.
The big thing about this movie is the main character, it's based off a very popular British mythology, like Sir Gawain. I don't know the mythology. All I know is he's a very popular British character. And you have Dave Patel playing a guy who would traditionally be white. And there's no mention of his race in the movie. There's nothing talking about his ethnicity. He is just a guy playing a character. And nobody cared. When the trailer came out, everyone was just excited for the movie. And it is just see, that is a perfect example. You can just put a brown person in the lead role and just have a really good character. And then you don't need to do all this stuff where you're perpetuating a stereotype, which still exists to this day. I I know that's followed me for my life, is that Apu accent has just since grade school up until working force, years, it is that stereotype that people learn from a young age, and they just don't know anything else. So they just keep going with that because that's all they know.
I think that's a great example of just the fact that when you don't give enough representation, you don't allow people to learn about other cultures and other people's backgrounds, and then all they have is a stereotype, and they can't even think outside of that because you don't give them the opportunity to. And I think that gives another great example of why we need more people of color and more diverse people writing producing,
for sure.
directing, acting, so that we can actually tell more authentic stories, and it's not just this stereotype. But Sarita, I know we had spoken previously also about Indian accents, and you had told me a really interesting story about Ravi Patel, and I was wondering if you could share that story with us.
Oh, yeah, from Master of None. Okay, so basically, I mean, Master of None, honestly, I really like that show. I mean, Aziz Ansari is a very acquired taste, regardless of his ethnicity. It's his sort of style as a comedian. And one thing he did really well in Master of None is it was, his best friend, Ravi Patel, sort of comes into one of the scenes and he's just like, I just did this audition and basically they just keep asking me to do the Indian accent. And I think at some point in time, he actually ends up just doing a role where the Indian accent is prevalent. And it's kind of just like sad because you can clearly see that Indians aren't just one sort of staple, stereotype that you can keep recycling wherever you feel like it's necessary, because it's not the case. Indians can look like myself, Indians can look like Ankit, Indians can look like Mindy, it could look like anyone. And it's kind of sad because you don't really want to hear that accent, because like for me, growing up, I don't speak Hindi, but I watch a shit ton of Bollywood films. Like that's all I grew up on. Can I sing the song? Sure. Can I speak it? Absolutely not. But it's one of those things where I'm just like, the accent is not just a defining thing, like people sexualize the British accent and they're like, it's so hot, and then, even like a accent that they even find unattractive, which is like a Cockney accent, even then people are still like, it's so hot. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, but but still, I mean, you're like, it's like, but people don't find the Indian accents, sexy because of the way that it's sort of done. I think Ankit made a really good point to say that how if you just want to stop this stereotype, just stop it. There are so many Indian actors and writers and actresses and actors who are probably a little scared to say to their white counterparts, or even a lot more diverse counterparts or people who might not understand their culture, to say like, this is not how we are. Like, I'm speaking to you in an American accent right now. This is not how I am. Or even if you hear some of my accent, what is it to you? Like, it's not the only thing that defines me. So it's just really frustrating because it's an easy solution.
It's so hard to speak up. I have two examples of that. Once I was just having lunch with some ex-coworkers, and one of them started doing the Indian accent, and it was the first time I ever said, hey, can you not do the accent? And I wasn't like, I wasn't attacking, I almost like whispered it, so I didn't like attract attention to it. And the person, and I shit you not, white by the way, said, oh no, don't worry, I have Indian friends. And I was just like, yo, like I almost dropped my chopsticks. I was like, what the fuck? But a second time where it was a more positive, it was another coworker, the person did the accent off the cuff, like, and it was a moment they didn't realize that they did it and that it was offensive. They just did it, and I straight up, I was like, hey man, why'd you do the accent? And they said, oh, like, it's funny. And they started doing the stammering. I was like, was it, if I were black, would you do an African accent? Just to put them in the place, just to see what would happen. And that person ended up taking me aside later and apologized. Like, they just honestly didn't realize that they were doing that or that it was offensive, because they've grown up with that. So they just assumed it was normal. And most people haven't spoken out about it until that Apu documentary came out. So yeah, it's just two random examples about how it is really hard to speak up, and some people will be aggressive towards it, and some hopefully will not.
Yeah. That's interesting though. I think that's a great response that you had of like, well, why is this funny? Like, would you do this to someone else? And it's like, oh, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, you're right. I definitely wouldn't. It's like, it's great to call out those things and just make people aware, because sometimes people are ignorant. They didn't think, and they didn't realize. And then when you make them aware, then that stays with them, and then they'll be like, okay, I will never do that again. Calling people out, but in a way that's educating, I guess, to be like, this isn't cool. But you mentioned the Apu documentary, and I think that's definitely something we should get into next, especially on the topic of accents. So for those who might not know, white actor Hank Azaria has voiced Apu on The Simpsons for years, like probably decades, because this show's been on for forever. And I think we're starting to see now. So he decided to let go of his role to let an actual Indian actor portray that role so that he wasn't perpetuating stereotypes. And I think we've actually been seeing that a lot recently. I don't know if you guys had seen with Central Park and with Big Mouth, where there were white actresses playing the voices of Black and half Black characters that have decided to step back from their roles as well to allow someone of color to take over because, you know, give them an opportunity. So what do you guys think of that? The idea of you know, letting these, having these people step back and allowing someone of color to take on these roles?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, when I think about it, it's sort of a thing like you wouldn't go out in public if you're a smart, conscious person and just purposely do brown or blackface. Like why would you, because that's not who you are. Why would you want to voice someone, regardless if they have a regular American accent, who doesn't look like you, who clearly their skin color in a time like this, that where their skin color clearly defines them, why is it that you feel the need to even take the job in the first place? You know, there's got to be some accountability here. And I think that it's like, this guy has been making money for years, and I'm not a huge, you know, Simpsons fan, but the only thing I knew about the Simpsons outside of the memes was Apu, you know, because even like when I was younger, like my friend would make fun of like, oh, you're Bella Cheat from like Phineas and Ferb, and I was just like, he has like an Indian accent and he has like fits into that stereotype, and it's just kind of like sad because it's like, you guys are fully aware of it, you know, and just because there is a strong sort of voice with the Black Lives Matter movement right now, like you think that how you can do it to other races because you can't do it to Black people now. Like you could just push your racism onto other people.
It's like going the next level.
It's just like, okay, well, I can do brown, you know, blackface, let me do brown face, let me do, you know, yellow face, let me do these things that are just racist. And I think that honestly, like, call a spade what a spade. The people and the white people who have been behind these shows should have damn as well knew what they were doing, because they were making money. And honestly, it's like, what, 18 years too late at this rate. like you made your money. That money could have gone to an Indian actor who could have probably just like did an accent because that's naturally his accent and that's naturally his voice, you know? So sad.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, like, I do like Apu. I think the character is funny. Like, the episodes where he's been on, where it's like central to his character, I genuinely very much enjoy them. But yeah, the voice thing, it's like, I think it comes down to like nuances, you know, like a person like Hank Azaria doesn't have that context. So like he can cross a boundary that he shouldn't because he just doesn't understand. Whereas if you had somebody else like who is brown voice the accent, they could know when to stop because they know how people react to certain things or how they perceive certain phrases or accents or whatever have you. It's just about that. If you weren't born with that or grown up with that, you don't know how those people think. So yeah, it's about those nuances. Like I feel like if Hank Azaria stayed on, it's because it's been so long. I don't think I would think too much about it. But yeah, all that to say, it's just it's the nuances. Just to go back to that, you know, it's finding that right balance of what not to say and what to say and who it's appropriate for.
I think that's a really great point, and just shows that, like, you know, when you have someone in that role that is that background, they can kind of help inform the story more to make it more authentic, especially if you're working with a creative team that is, you know, people that are not in that background. I actually had heard that in Bring It On, Gabrielle Union actually helped them kind of figure out what to do with the Clovers and helped like inform the story a bit more to make it more authentic for them, so that it wasn't just like, you know, people sort of whitewashing the characters. And so I think kind of what you mentioned, like, to have a white actor playing this role does, even if he's doing a good job, there are nuances or you're kind of still whitewashing that character in a way. So it doesn't give you the full authentic experience.
Yeah,
it waters it down.
Yeah.
And I know one argument, a huge argument with that documentary that came out was like, well, Simpsons is offensive to everyone. You know, Homer's a lazy fat American. You have the Bumblebee Man. You have the Italian mafia. Like, everyone is offended. So why are you taking it so personally? And it just goes back to that topic of better representation, because yes, you have Homer, who's the fat American, but then you watch hundreds of movies where you have like the strong military American, you know, or like the strong cowboy. You know, you have the Bumblebee man who is like a Mexican stereotype, but then, you know, you have these better representations in media of like, you know, a passionate lover or like just different forms, right? Whereas with Indians, it was you have a Pooh, and then you have Kal Penn in The Rise of Taj, and now you have Raj Koothrappali from Big Bang Theory. They're all like cut from the same cloth, so there was none that positive anchor that you could grasp onto, being like, okay, no, this isn't the norm. There are like different facets, but no, it was the one stream.
It's crazy to me because Homer is yellow. Homer is everybody is yellow. Okay.
Yeah.
Apu is brown.
He got the color.
Thing is that, so even if you say, you know, if someone wants to defend Homer's sort of position on it, they're going to be like, well, he's not our skin color, so we don't see it that way, you know, but Apu is like literally brown. So like you will look at a brown person and like say those same stereotypes. So that's the reason why, like, you look at Peter from Family Guy and that's the stereotype of the fat, lazy American sort of trope. But the thing is that growing up, that's not what people see in the media. You know, I think it also has to do a lot with, you know, Kristen, you had asked me about sort of different things happening right now that sort of speaks to our representation. I don't know if, Ankit, you checked out Family Karma yet.
Family Karma. No, I haven't even heard of it.
I'm going to educate you right now on Family Karma. So, working in reality TV for many years, I've always seen Bravo put out, like, you know, even VH1 and Bravo put out like reality shows where they fit into stereotypes too, where there are people, you know, who are Black who are fighting. You know, you have the crazy, you know, Italian girls from Jersey. But it's actually very interesting. They put out a show called Family Karma, and it is I think about like 9 episodes of basically this very wealthy Indian family and their friends in Miami, in Florida, and basically they're showing off their wealth, but they're also celebrating holidays that we all know and love, like Diwali, and they're, you know, speaking of other culture, but it's just very normal for them. And even in that, like, there's one dude who's half Guyanese. He doesn't mention it in the show, but everybody picks it up at some point in time. And even that, like, them talking about their culture, but it not defining them was also another thing was cool, because they're doing the same things that the white people on the boat are doing on Bravo. Like, they're just having fun and they're being out with their friends, but they also have to go to Mandir and they also go to temple and they also have to do these things. So, and they have the drama and they have these things. So that was a really good example for me, like normalizing our culture in a sense without being bad representation, because technically they speak the language, they are the culture, this is what they've grown up with their whole entire life. It doesn't mean that how our own culture can sort of, you know, point the fingers at ourselves and sort of misrepresent us and not do a better job in representing us. But we need more Dave Patels. We need more actors, even American Indian actors, to sort of step up to the plate, because Jamila Jamil is British, Dave Patel is British, you know, a lot of the, you know, actors, you know, now are British, you know, and they have their own sort of, they've had their own run of sort of like racism between brown people in London and England. Because for me, like, even like Bend It Like Beckham, that was like the first movie I've ever saw that brought me so much joy, because it poked so much fun at our culture, because it was just like, look at how ridiculous our parents are acting about relationships, and how being an independent woman and just wanting to play a sport was such a problem, or having sort of, you know, a burn mark was such an insecurity to Jess. And she was dark and she was brown. And that for me was really, you know, kick ass, and I love that movie so much. But then I realized, like, she's speaking about racism in England. Like, she's like that all this shit is happening in England. Like, it's not happening over here, you know. So
that's a great point. And I feel like Bend It Like Beckham is also the first film that I saw with Indian representation in it. And I think it definitely is one that, like, you know, still speaks to people. Now, I'm curious, based off of that film, I'm not sure if you guys would have thoughts on the idea of Indian culture, but also kind of, I feel like there's a lot of times where we see Indian characters and they're the only Indian character surrounded by white characters. And I feel like sometimes that influences how they interact with their own culture because they're just around all these, white people. And I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
So basically, because I'm the staple brown person in all of my group of white friends, and I'm grateful to say that the friends that I have, all the white friends that I have, aren't culturally insensitive. But I've had to do some educational learning and teachings here and there because it is hard. I think that's what kind of happens in Never Have I Ever. Like, she's like the only like Indian girl there, and she sort of has to. But the way that her parents has raised her, is that they've kept their sort of Indian identity, but they still had to modernize and Westernize themselves. So it's a little bit hard because even in Indo-Caribbean culture, when you lose your Guyanese accent and you have a job and you go to college and you're educated, they always seem as if like, oh, you think that you're bigger than me now. Yeah. Like the elders always think that. I'm sure it's the same in like Indian culture where it's just like, oh, you're educated now. Oh, you have you're losing your accent. Oh, you think you're bigger than me. You think that you're better than me. You think it's a lot of this. It sucks because a lot of it starts in the home. A lot of it starts with this sort of like battle that you have to deal with yourself less than your friends, because a lot of times you'll probably feel more normal with your friends because you just want to be normal. You don't want to. If you lose your accent, that's fine. For me, I've never had a Guyanese accent, but I was the only brown person with my family living in a Spanish-speaking country. And then when I moved to America, it was everybody in Queens who was like brown, and it felt normal. But even then, I never really fit in because my upbringing was not the same. I wasn't raised in Guyana, so like I wasn't raised with that culture. So it's oftentimes it's like it's a sort of a double-edged sword. As far as your culture, because I'm sure like even Ankit, you could speak to like Canadian culture. Like there's a lot of Indian people in Canada. There's a lot of Guyanese people in Canada, right? But because when you start speaking and you're educated on movies and films and you're not a doctor or an engineer, they're probably like, you're not really doing something that's going to give you a future, are you? Like, you're not really like, not a lot of cultures have to deal with that. I know all my white friends never had to deal with that. If they want to change their majors 20 times or fail college, like, those were options for them. Those were never options for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I feel like I will admit I am very blessed to have grown up with a progressive family, a progressive brown family. I went to school for marketing, and back home, I remember my parents told me that they like told my uncle or something, and he was like, he's going into marketing, like he's not going to make any money. Like that was his thinking, but my parents were totally fine with it. And so I've never had that sort of pressure. And to your point of being raised in Canada, I've been very fortunate. I was not surrounded by just one race. When I hang out with my friends, honestly, it looks like one of those like car commercials, when it's all just like really ethnic young people and they're just like having a good time. Like it's white people, Asians, Indians, like Muslims, like there's all of us. So I never felt like out of place.
Great. It's great. I think perspective. Keep going, Sarita. What are you going to say?
I think that it's good that how we're sort of the generation sort of changing those tropes, because my parents are pretty progressive too, but I've also had to see them sort of be very strict Indian parents and then move into more progressive parents. And my sisters always give me shit for that because they are a lot more easygoing with me. But that's because I've sort of taught them, that like you trust me, and what I'm doing clearly is making me money and clearly giving me the life that I would love, that I love and I can afford. And I don't have to be in those different fields. Like my parents never told me to be a doctor, an engineer, or any one of us, but lawyer was on the table. All of these different, tropes for Indian women were on the table as well. But it's really good to have friends of all different cultures. But it's sad to say that how just because you have friends of different cultures doesn't mean that there won't be those stereotypes that come up here and there, and that's when you have to do a little bit of, check in, and you have to, sort of educate them a little bit, because that's how you move the needle. That's how you are our generation of free thinkers and saying that we understand our parents, religion and culture. We understand that, but we're gonna move forward to actually making sure that those pressures that are there aren't applied so heavily. We give our children choices.
That's great. And now, do you guys think that do you feel like the Indian representation is slowly becoming more progressive?
I personally do, yes. Like I already mentioned Dev Patel, but another person who I wanted to mention was Sacha Dhawan. He was he was on that awful NBC show a while back, Outsourced. I don't know if you remember that show.
No.
Yeah. So,
yeah, it got canceled, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Basically, Kristen got job. It was a show about a white guy going to India because like his like company got outsourced to a call center.
Oh.
Fun. But so in that show, he was like a I'm a like generic Indian guy. But in Iron Fist season 2, he was the main villain, and he was a kung fu ass kicking badass. Like he was like no accent, no nothing. He like his skin color didn't matter to his character. He was just like aggressive, and he was such a cool character. And I remember like he was the best part of that show. That show got canceled because of many reasons, but he was the best part. I remember seeing that, and I was like, oh man, like that's awesome. And then Dev Patel, he's going to be in this movie. He also played he was also in the David Copperfield film, which again is another very iconic British character who he like just took over the role and nobody cared. And I really think that's the big thing is when they get cast in this role and there's not an uproar. You know, it's just like, okay, yeah, he's a good actor, so yeah, I think he'll do a good job. And honestly, I'm happy with that. I'm like, okay, yeah, cool, let's go for it.
Yeah, I hope Indian women can be inspired to sort of take on that too, because that's the reason why I love Lila in the Umbrella Academy, because she is someone who is, I mean, granted she is British, but you know, as long as we can still see those representations in sort of Indian female superheroes and sort of supervillains or that sort of trope, because even with Sendil Ramamurthy, I can't say his last name properly. I'm not Indian enough, unfortunately, but Sendil, who was also Never Have I Ever, was also a villain in The Flash, you know, like he's been in he's also married to Mindy Kaling in The Office, like that sort of, and that the Indian wedding and everything like that. Like my sister showed me that episode a while back, and I was just like, oh, like he's in that too, and he plays a villain in The Flash. Like this is cool. Like I love seeing that there's some, and also he's very handsome. So it's just like seeing this sort of and he's dark, and that's what I just friggin' love, because even in Bollywood films, you do see a lot more dark skinned, you know, lead actors than you do see like, you know, like dark skinned female actors. And that's what I like about like, even what I'm seeing now, like there's still like, I think for the female side, we have a lot more ways to go as far as the sort of normalizing Indian women in a multitude of roles. I think there's a long way that we have to go there, but I'm glad to see that there's a start, you know, because we need to see that representation. We need to get, you know, we need to get those Indian parents who think that their daughters are only good for marriage out of that sort of mindset. And she can say, no, look at this girl. Look, this is the girl who is a supervillain, and she's this and she's that, and she's a superhero, and she's doing something different. You know, she's an actress. Like that sort of representation, I think that is a lot more needed. Like I've always loved Dev Patel, and I've always loved seeing his growth as an actor. He's just a damn good actor, you know. But I love that people don't pay attention to his race. But I think that how we need to want that. There needs to be more encouragement for that for female, you know, for Indian women as well, and actors and actresses.
What do you think about Naomi Scott? I personally, I like her where her career is going.
She's done so many great things. Has had such a range from Terra Nova to Lemonade Mouth, Power Rangers, Charlie's Angels, Aladdin. Yeah. She's had a very just great career. So go ahead. What do you guys think about Naomi Scott? I don't know if you have.
No, I think she's great. You know, I love that she was able to play so many different, you know, roles. I love that, like, even in Aladdin, like, you know, she's soft and she's still like badass a little bit, but like she can still, again, prove that. But for me, in my opinion, I think that she is light skinned, and for me, I would love to see someone just like her who is darker skinned doing what she's doing right now. And I hope that. And I know that her sort of role in these films and movies, films and TV shows will help move the needle for dark-skinned women as well. But I hope that, and Indian women as a whole, but I really do hope and wanted to see more of them. Like, I don't want people, the brown, dark-skinned Indian women, to think that they can only be the Mindy Kalings of the world.
For sure. So I actually think a big milestone is hopefully going to be Miss Marvel. So it's been announced as a Disney Plus show that Marvel, the cinematic universe, is going to be producing, and she is
the new Mutants.
Sorry?
Is that the New Mutants or no?
No. It's going to be a completely separate thing on Disney Plus, and it's going to tie into like the bigger Marvel universe. But Miss Marvel, she is dark skinned. Her name is Kamala Khan. Like her character is like very tied to her upbringing and her ethnicity. And I think if they can, like you said, nail the casting, like don't just get someone who is Indian, get someone who is dark skinned Indian, because that is what the character is. I really think it's going to make a lot of huge steps forward.
Yeah, absolutely. For a little bit of context, to just so Captain Marvel originally was like a superhero guy, and then he passed on the mantle to like numerous guys, and then eventually to Miss Marvel, Carol Danvers. So that's why there's like the new Captain Marvel that's a woman, played by Brie Larson, and then she passed on her mantle of Miss Marvel to Kamala's character. So there's like, it's all like this whole progression in the comic books, like this huge legacy. And actually the comic books are really great. So I'm really excited to see this new Disney Plus show. And I hope you're right. I hope they do go outside the box with the character and go darker skin and go, for something we haven't seen before.
Are you going to convince me to not be a DC fan anymore?
We might be. And I mean,
Marvel.
Marvel is being pretty progressive with their superheroes.
Yeah, Marvel's way more progressive right now than DC. I will say that, but
yeah, there's a lot of great diversity coming into their upcoming superhero roster. So it's gonna be good stuff.
I mean, speaking of Kamala, just Kamala Harris in general. Just saying that in general. I can say that there are some of her politics that I disagree with. Granted, we don't have that much of a choice right now. But what I do love is that she is a South Asian. She definitely speaks a lot about her heritage and her upbringing, and she's someone who is like, she's nothing other than who she is. She's parents Jamaican and Indian, and there's her and her sister, and just. I think that was just awesome, because then now people are going to, again, learn more about someone's culture who grew up in that life. It's that representation that we need. And it's also a representation of the actual people in India, because not everyone in India looks like Priyanka Chopra. Not everyone in India looks like Aishwarya Rai or Shah Rukh Khan. Like, everyone looks very different, and they're primarily dark. So I think it's about time that both Hollywood and Bollywood hangs up their hat and say that we need to actually appreciate the people who are not going to be background dancers or people who work on grip or just people who are the caterers and in the background anymore. It's time to put them in the forefront, and stop being racist and just actually, and actually give attention to where we deserve, so.
Great point, Sarita. I feel like you wrapped it all up right there. I don't know if you guys have any additional things you want to add before we start wrapping up a little bit and also getting into some of the viewer questions. I think we got some really good viewer questions coming in. So
we got some viewer questions.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So anything else you guys want to mention about Indian representation or South Asian representation that we haven't gotten to yet?
Yeah, I'm not sure about you, Sarita. All I know, I don't know if it's a closing thought or whatever. I just, I think the key to good representation is just to not focus so much on the race. I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I personally don't want to see an all Indian Hollywood film. You know what I mean? Like Crazy Rich Asians. I don't want to see a version like that.
It's triggering, but
well, that's the thing, right? Because I feel like I have a feeling, and I may be wrong, and I hope I am wrong. But I feel like with all these things, like with the Black Panther or a Crazy Rich Asians, it's turning into a trend, like progression is turning into a trend, and trends die. And I'm just worried that if something like this happens, it's just like, oh yeah, it's an Indian film. It's not just a film that happens to have Indian people, I just feel like my opinion of good representation is just, hey, if there's going to be a new movie with a detective as a lead character, fucking put Kumail Nanjiani up there, let's just say, let's just pick a character who was right for the job, and let's not focus so much on the race.
Yeah, like blind casting who's right for the role, not just, who looks like they should be, someone who actually has the acting skills for it.
Yeah. I think we've been having a slow matriculation of Indian actors in multiple sort of places in film and television. Sure. So personally, I wouldn't want to see this sort of Bend Like Beckham was kind of like that, where it was just like, let's focus on this very, traditional Indian family and her break away from it. But again, different, other side of the pond, and definitely here in America, it's different. That's the reason why I brought up Family Karma, because that show sort of like does that, and it hits those points, but also it also focuses on other things. It focuses more so on just they have regular drama just like everybody else that doesn't really have to do with them being Indian.
Of course.
Thank you both so much for joining me. You'll be able to find out all the information and links to Pop Culture Planet and our guests below. But if you guys want to follow Sarita and Ankit, do you guys want to share where they can find you? Ankit, you want to go first?
Yeah, I am in one place. It's easy. It's Instagram at The Casual Moviegoer.
Great.
Yep. Sarita? And for me, I'm just on Instagram as well. I'm at Sarita Nauth. That's SARITA NAUTH. And you'll see a lot of beauty stuff on there, but I get a little bit more diversified in my Instagram stories. So.
And if you're interested in following the podcast, you can follow me pretty much everywhere at Kmaldo, or the show at Pop Culture Planet Podcast on Instagram. You can catch new episodes of the show every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. EST. And if you watch the live video version of Pop Culture Planet on my channel, youtube.com/Kmaldo, you'll be able to join in on the conversation in real time and stick around at the end for the Q&A, where we dive into more stuff that's not in the audio podcast. Episodes are also available on all of your favorite podcast listening platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. And if you enjoyed the episodes, consider subscribing so you know when a new one is posted. Rate and review this podcast and share it with your fellow pop culture lovers. Thanks for listening. It's been a blast, and talk to you next week. All right, guys. So we got some questions here. Let's bring them up. First is from Zach Pajak, who says, very psyched for this. You guys are awesome. Hoping the Mindy Kaling, Priyanka Chopra in the Works collaboration gets touched on. Have you guys heard about this? Mindy Kaling and Priyanka? I haven't heard about this either. Let's see. Mindy Kaling and Priyanka Chopra collaboration. They're working on an Indian wedding rom-com.
I'm sorry. This whole entire hour and a half, we've been talking about getting away from the stereotypical tropes, and here we are, just back at it. I'm almost positive that Mindy's gonna play the sister who doesn't get the love and attention. In the movie with Rebel Wilson, Priyanka Chopra is in that movie, and she is turns around and does her Bollywood hair flip, and everybody in America is like, "Oh my god, that's so cute," and does. We've seen it before. It's literally just going to. I have faith in Mindy more than I have for Priyanka to do something a little bit more different and not the same things, because people who watch Bollywood just see the same shit over and over for the past 20 years.
Yeah, so I'm seeing a little bit of information about the film. It says Kaling and Chopra will be first cousins, one who's Indian American, Kaling, and the other who's born and raised in India, Chopra. So, I definitely see the story that Sarita mentioned coming true. It's supposed to be a fish out of water Indian American in India story. So it kind of does sound a little bit like a Crazy Rich Asians kind of story. So exactly what you guys were just talking about.
I heard Priyanka was going to do a live action movie for Wild Wild Country. I don't know if that's still happening. I don't know if do you guys know of that documentary? Oh, you guys don't know that documentary? Wild Wild Country? The one of the Rajneeshi cult taking over a small town in.
Oh, yes. Okay, yes.
Yeah. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, I don't know. I just didn't know the name, but my coworkers talk about it all the time. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes. That is something very interesting. I'm actually even between that, the Rajneeshi and the Bikram sort of stories, those I'm actually very interested to see sort of Indian perspective of it, because Guyanese people don't have that much help with cults, so we're not going to bring that up. So we're not going to talk about cults and the Guyanese people.
Oh my gosh!
All
right. Let's get into the next question from Elliot of Movie Files. He says, "Shout out to Kristen for having these much needed and important conversations." Thank you, Elliot. And he says, "What's up, Ankit? And first time seeing Sarita, and she's awesome."
Thank you.
Elliot's very talented. He has his own YouTube channel. He's everywhere, and he is he knows his shit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. We have a comment from Rita Ready Set Go who says, "Love your name, Sarita. I have the same name."
Hi, Rita. It's actually very funny because my name isn't. I as I've gotten older, my name has also been interpreted in so many different like countries all over the world. Like Sarita is very Spanish. I first heard my name in a Spanish soap opera, but then I never saw it in sort of like Indian culture. I started seeing that later on in life. But then I actually met people in from Africa that were just like, Sarita is actually a very common name in like Kenya or something like that. I'm just like, whoa, like, okay, like this is very interesting. So as I got older, I got an appreciation for my name.
Nice, yeah.
Very cool.
I have very different pronunciations of my name. Ankit is how you pronounce it, but I'm in Canada. I'm referred to as Ankit, and actually that's how I introduce myself, just because I'm used to it now. I actually don't mind it, but yeah, the naming stuff.
You should have whitewashed your name.
I know.
Let's get to the next question. Another question from Zach. It says, "Best, most thoughtful podcast I've heard on my drive home." Thank you. Apologies if this was brought up, but what are your thoughts on Bend It Like Beckham and Lion? Have you guys? Well, we talked about Bend It Like Beckham, but have you guys seen Lion?
Oh yeah.
I haven't seen Lion.
Oh my god. Amazing movie. I have a lot of thoughts about Lion, actually.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, Lion, I actually feel like, starring Dave Patel, recurring trend in this podcast. I actually think Lion was a very, very important movie for Indian representation, because it was the first time, and so that was 2017, long time coming. It was the first time I saw white women go crazy over an Indian man for sex appeal. It was Dave Patel came, he had the long hair.
Surprised.
I'm not surprised it happens. It's just in like a mainstream conversation, you know. My girlfriend is white, and when she saw Dave Patel in that movie, it wasn't like a, oh, he's cute. It was like a, where has he been type of like actor. And I remember he went on Ellen, and even Ellen, like, she was making him feel very uncomfortable by saying like, "You're hot now," and like she put a big poster of him like as a cover on Sexiest Man Alive. It was a whole thing, but it made him very uncomfortable. But I actually feel it's very important to kind of break that barrier and break that stereotype of the awkward Indian nerd, was to have an Indian guy who is just like, women are clearly attracted to him. And I actually think that's Hollywood is all based on sex. If you're going to make progress, you have to have some sex appeal, you know, like that's what happened to Chris Pratt and his career now. Shout out to Kumail Nanjiani for getting all buff, and now people are noticing him. You know, that's what
I hate, though.
I know, right? I think they would bash him like, "Oh, look how you used to be," and he's like, "Thanks," you know.
I hate that. I hate that he had to get buff because the photo that I saw initially was someone who like watches Bollywood culture like here and there, was all the types of the Indian male lead who gets really, really buff. So it was just like, for me, I was just like, oh, like you lost your appeal. But I can understand where he's coming from, because you don't see that sort of representation of Indian men in film. You don't see that. So, I mean, Dave Patel never needs to be buff for like anyone to sort of love his sort of schoolboy charm and appeal. But again, he's also British. So
but it was that. That's the thing with Hollywood, right? It's so vain. You need that sort of superficial stuff to break through, and then hopefully people's minds can open up, and then you go more normalized.
I think that can go with Crazy Rich Asians too, because it wasn't until people saw a full cast of really good-looking Asians, which it's not like it doesn't exist, but because they saw a variety of Asians and sort of how hot Henry Golden is, they realized that like, oh, like, there's other people who are outside of the particular race that are hot, you know, and don't have to be this like fit into that, you know, stereotype. So again, not that we need another Crazy Rich Asians for Indians, but
stuff like that then just gives people more awareness of these people. And like Henry Golding has been doing a lot since his role in Crazy Rich Asians. So like, good for him, and you know, hopefully that'll happen for more people, that like people will become more aware of them, and then their careers will blow up, and then we'll get more representation.
Yeah.
We got a comment from Ronald E. Smith. What's up, Ron? He says, first off, Ankit and Sarita, we're fantastic here, dropping in some hard truth and honesty. My question is, what shows and films would you recommend for us to see?
Very good question. I'm assuming he's talking about shows and films that have Indians.
I'm going to say both. We don't need to just focus on one thing. So maybe if you want to give a couple that you feel that you really love that represent Indian people, but also just some that you just love.
All right. I have to think about that for a second. I don't know, Sarita, if you have anything off the top of your head. I have to know.
Sarita, I feel like you got a lot of shows, Sarita.
Yeah.
Sarita, you watch a lot of TV.
I can go through a show in a minute, honestly. I recently finished Yellowstone, which, again, another show which I'm just like, these white people on a ranch, I know what the show is going to be about. But it's actually pretty good. So that I finished, that was pretty good. Again, like, you also don't see Indian people on a ranch, so that's another concept right there. But with
that would be hilarious. Try to see by someone like my dad on a ranch. Hell yeah.
I will say that for me, just incredible TV that I've seen this year is Money Heist. I think that is a incredible show that is just does not even need to be like, I don't care about diversity on that show. That show is just fucking amazing. That show is just so good. Was I meant to curse? I'm sorry. Then
I'll allow it.
And then as far as like Indian representation, it's a little hard because it's one of those things where I mentioned the slow matriculation for our culture. There isn't one particular show. Like, I wouldn't recommend Family Karma if you want to watch a show. Ronald seems like he wants something a little bit more intelligent. So I will say Never Have I Ever is a cute show overall because there are some tropes. I know it's a little more young skewing. So it's a little hard as far as my recommendations. I will say any Dave Patel movie at this rate. Just saying, we talked about it for almost an hour too. So
for me, I actually did a video of like my top 5 Bollywood films. And actually the response was very interesting because a lot of the people who follow me have never seen Bollywood, even though in cinephile culture, watching foreign films is a big thing. South Korean cinema, French cinema. But people generally just bypass Bollywood. So there was a lot of people thankful for the video and that they actually can experience better films. So The Lunchbox, that is one of my recommendations. If you guys haven't seen it, it stars Irfan Khan, who unfortunately passed away earlier this year. Such a talented actor, but beautiful love story, somber, almost melancholy, almost heartbreaking story about a man who's an aging widow and a lonely housewife. They sort of meet through interesting circumstances. And honestly, it is like one of my favorite movies. I always try to pimp it out every chance I get. Other than that, Sacred Games on Netflix. If you guys have seen that at all.
I haven't.
Very, very. It was Netflix's first foray into Indian content. So it was sort of like their version of Narcos. And it's season 3 is hopefully going to come out soon. Really, really good show. Really dark show. Really recommend people who like that sort of crime drama. And as a general TV show, I finished Succession not too long ago. And one of the best TV shows I've seen in a long time. If you guys haven't seen it, not Indian related, just amazing dialogue, well written, great screenplay. So good.
Awesome.
I think there's a movie you recently recommended that
Yes.
And I definitely made sure I saved it because for me, my relationship with Bollywood films has sort of gone in and out. Like, after I started watching it, like, I love Govinda films. I love like the 90s. I am so stuck in the 90s when it comes to Indian films because those are prime eras. The fashions were amazing. The music, the song, everything was just so innocent and just fun. It was honestly, if there's anything I recommend that you do if you want to just fall in love with Indian culture, go right into the 90s, early 2000s, early Shah Rukh Khan, early Salman Khan, Hrithik Roshan, Aishwarya Rai, like all of this stuff. Like, that is like the shit. Like, that is honestly like the era in which I fell in love with Bollywood because you had Kajol, you had Ajay Devgan, you had all these people who were just mixed and beautiful, and the music was great. And I mean, I love Mohabbatiyaan. That's my favorite movie forever and ever. It's a classic Indian movie. And I think what I like about it is that there's some young people, there's some old people, there's some drama, there's some betrayal, plot twists. There's a little bit of everything for everyone. So if I had to recommend one, it would be that. Never mind, I'm stuck in the past.
Awesome. Great recommendations. We actually got a comment from, get this one up. Someone saying the lunchbox is great from Zach, so definitely got to check that one out. We also have another comment from Ron that says, do you have any dreams or goals that you would like to accomplish?
Wow.
We're going deep. We're going
deep. It's a lofty question.
Wow. Yeah. I would say for me, I feel like this has been a really good year. I've been having a lot of, launched a podcast. That's a dream.
You're very good as being a podcast host, by the way. You have a very good voice for being a podcast host.
Thank you. I'm trying my best. I'm trying to let the people talk. Let you guys talk. I'm not the expert in this one, so I really appreciate you guys coming on and sharing all your insights and dropping knowledge on us here. But yeah,
dreams
you guys have coming up, hopes, any plans, or even just any projects or goals that you have for this year?
I mean, I think, not to speak for both of us, Sarita, but I think we're both pretty committed with our certain content that we're creating. I know for me personally, like, I don't just want to do 1-minute reviews for the rest of my life. I do have a plan and some sort of a vision of where I can see this going into turning into a more of a full arching media empire where it's not just movies, it's games, TV shows, comics, all the stuff I love, like just pop culture and entertainment in general, actually, like someone like Lainey Gossip, who my girlfriend loves to read, like she started off writing just blogs and now she's a correspondent on eTalk, which is like the Canadian entertainment show. Why not, right? Like it's an independent creator who did that and now they're up there. So there's tons of examples like that. But I guess if we're going to have some delusions of grandeur, that is my top. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, definitely, Ankit, you put it in there. It's sort of moving beyond the platform, because I've always believed, and Kristen, you've heard this for many years, if you haven't been able to build your brand outside of an actual platform, it's going to be hard if that platform goes under. Look at what's happening to Vine, and look what happened to Vine and what happened to TikTok. You have to be able to be a brand yourself, and that way you'll be able to expand yourself, so that way you can get paid opportunities for you as a brand. So the Casual Moviegoer as a brand, like Glam by Sarita as a brand, like K Maldo as a brand. Like, it's one of those things for me where bringing beauty inclusion for me has been a huge journey, because I felt like I did something with my show, but as I started to sit with it, I said, I want to do something more, global, and I want to do something more. And I think that I have been getting a good start with sort of my South African audience, who I absolutely love, because they're so dedicated and they're so engaged, and they're not sort of clouded by what's going on in the beauty industry today. And because they're not part of that world, they're just beauty lovers. And something for me is just sort of, I'm actually grateful that this pandemic, I've been getting a lot more like PR and packages and things that actually been able to grow my business. And it's hard, because when you think that you're stuck at home, I still have a day job. Kristen and I still have a day job, at the same place
after work,
and we still have to do this, But I think there's one thing for us that, we have a good support system within each other, and hopefully we can definitely be that for you too, and for everybody that you've had on this podcast too. I think it's great that what you've been doing, because you're bringing people from all different, walks of life, and saying, I'm going to give you more opportunities. You've always been doing that. So I'm grateful for what you have, going on here. I'm grateful that my 5-hour-long conversation on the phone with you inspired this.
It truly did.
She's like, do you think this could be an episode? And I'm just like, I guess. I'm just yelling and screaming at midnight to you.
Because I think this is stuff that we're just all passionate about in general. About film and TV and pop culture and representation and diversity and inclusion. And it's like, to be able to come together and talk about it together and uplift each other's voices and stuff. It's like, why not? Like, that's if it's a great feeling. And like, to see the comments that we're getting now of just people being like, this conversation like is eye-opening, or like, this is a great discussion, and like, just the fact that you guys are able to like educate us on what you think, about these topics. I'm learning so much, and I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, actually, when I announced that I was going to be on this, a couple of people said that they love your podcast, and they
Wow,
you
that's
did
awesome.
it!
We're doing it. We're making it.
You're breaking into the Canadian market. This is what we want.
Yes. Next, I'll be on Degrassi.
Yes.
That's my dream. All right. So we got a couple more comments here. This one looks a little bit controversial, but I feel like I would like to hear you guys' take on this. Beezus saying you got Bollywood.
What does that mean?
Basically saying, why do we need representation in Hollywood when we have that? And I think that's something that we talked about.
I'm sorry.
What were you saying?
Have you seen a Bollywood movie? The representation isn't there, honey. Like, it's not, and that's the problem. That it's so hard to even fix it within our own culture, let alone and even find acceptance for myself who isn't considered Indian by my own people. It's hard to find that. In Bollywood, you'll find that most of it, yes, there's more English speaking, there's a lot more actors and actresses who are more westernized and Americanized. But there's a long way to go for it because we can't all be in that bubble of Bollywood. Bollywood has extended itself into the Western world. It's been in the Hollywood and film. If Hollywood can take our weddings, our culture, our colors, our saris, our everything, why is it that we can't have the proper representation for it? Mm-hmm. So the same way that how Asians wanted proper representation instead of being these stereotypical, sort of nerds and, sort of laundromat owners and these sort of like tropes that they've had for many years is the reason why Indian people don't want to be represented as a cabbie or the deli owner their whole entire lives in Hollywood. Because yes, in Bollywood, do you think that how dark-skinned Indians are even being represented in a positive light? No, they're nowhere to be found. They are just the deli owners and the cabbies and the background. They're not the stars.
Yeah. No.
Exactly.
Exactly echoing what you're saying. But I also think that question, it's a very old way of thinking about Hollywood. Mm-hmm. Globalization is happening. Parasite won Best Picture. It's a South Korean film. Like we have to stop thinking that Hollywood just resides in North America. A movie will die if the Chinese market and the international market doesn't give it the box office numbers it needs. So to think that, you have like that one geographic designation, so you should be happy with that. India is the reason that Marvel is so popular. Like people in India love Marvel movies. So it should be like cross-promotional, it's like they're supporting Hollywood. Hollywood has to support them, it's just like the world is changing. You can't just think that borders are going to separate and everyone's going to be happy.
The other thing is that North America is a melting pot. There are people of all different backgrounds, so there are Indian people in America. There are Spanish people in America. There are Asian people in America that want to see themselves on screen and not just feel limited to, I have to conform to this one societal way of representing people in only one area. We're a huge melting pot in the United States. Mm-hmm. The whole world is built on immigrants. Yeah. So of course there should be. I think there should be representation for everyone across all mediums, mm-hmm. because the world is a diverse place. We really need to focus more on inclusion and not on separating people out to, you should only like this mm-hmm. because of this,
100%.
Yeah. So I thought that was could have been a little controversial, but I think it brought up a great conversation. Mm-hmm. I think it is something to bring up. Another comment from Movie Files. Who are some of your favorite up-and-coming actors, actresses, and directors working today?
It's a very good question.
That is a good question.
Yeah. I know for me, up-and-coming, like I really enjoy what Alex Garland does, director. He did Ex Machina and Annihilation and the show Devs. He's a sci-fi. Awesome. Yeah, like he's kind of like breathing new life into the sci-fi genre, because sci-fi for the longest time has been robots and aliens and space like invasion, and it's just been the same thing for like 10 years. And he's actually bringing back the thing that made sci-fi popular in the first place, about human stories and existentialism and not just spaceships and lasers. It's actually like a deep grounded story that takes place on like a galactic level. So I'm really, really like what he does there. And then like pretty much anyone who does anything for A24 is like, I'm watching their stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of Alex Garland, we actually had a really great conversation about sci-fi and horror and like mind-bending sci-fi in the last episode of Pop Culture Planet. So doing a little plug, if you want to check out the playlist that's over there for more episodes. But a director that I really enjoy recently is Jordan Peele. I really like the way that he dives into social issues, but also puts people of color into, horror and sci-fi. And, it sort of feels like a love letter in a way to putting people of color into these, these genres that we're not normally seen in. And I think he's doing a lot of really great work. Get Out was great. Us. He's executive producing Lovecraft Country right now, which is like
so
wild.
So good.
Yeah, and it's fun to see, to be able to see the issues that they tackle and like the deeper messages. And I love when we're like doing detective work, putting pieces together. What does this mean? What does that mean? All the metaphors, and also just being able to see more people of color in the forefront in these kinds of projects. What about you, Sarita?
Gosh, I was really hoping you would skip over me. But I realized there's no one else left. It's really hard because my taste in movies and TV shows is so eclectic. I can go from binging Lucifer tomorrow to like actual like intelligent films and movies and series. So it's a little hard because I don't really have a favorite of a person, just sort of like works and movies that I really, really enjoy. I will say that The Witcher was something I really, really enjoyed. So like, obviously, I think that how I love to see that show. I mean, granted, I'm very biased because I love Henry Cavill, but seeing his growth as an actor, definitely. And The Witcher is just amazing work. He doesn't say much, but it's great. But I will say, I brought it up again, Money Heist, Alex Pina, who created the show, like did such a phenomenal job with that. I think it's a very intelligent show. And it's also something that like I enjoy watching with the subtitles on and listening in the actual native language. I've been doing that, Kristen, I've been doing that with like The Rain with Dark, with a lot of different films and movies that's been on Netflix that are just foreign that I actually really enjoy because it gives me, one, you see more passions with the actors and actresses there. So I can't really pinpoint one, but something I really do enjoy is more foreign television show because it's what you said earlier. If you sort of limit yourself to this one sort of genre and only Hollywood thinking, you're going to miss out on so much in the world that all these amazing Latin to Indian to, Black to just all these amazing sort of cultures and people, what they have to offer. So it's a little hard for me to pinpoint one thing because my style is all over.
No, I hear you.
But
I think you make a great point also just about like I feel like the fact that Netflix has so many international titles has really opened me up to being able to, just like learn more about other cultures and find other movies and shows that I really love. And I'm a big fan of subtitles in general. Even if it's not in another language, I need it up so I can focus and, really capture what's going on. But yeah, I need to catch up on Dark. That's one that I have not really seen, but I know that I would love it because I love those like mind-bending stories.
It's like you like Stranger Things, like just because you have to put on subtitles for this, like don't like. I hate watching it with like listening with dub now because I started that with The Rain. I started that with The Rain, and I said this is just weird. Especially with Money Heist, I started off in English, and then I said this just seems weird. The passion that I would get from hearing their native tongue is not the same.
Sometimes it translates weird too.
Oh, so weird. So weird.
Is The Ring that show about like a pandemic or something? I have it saved on my watch list. I just
so there's 3 seasons. It's basically about this rain comes down and it's sort of a virus that sort of wipes everybody out, but there's a lot more back history on like what sort of happens.
Oh, nice.
Also, I will say that for really good directors, show creators, like I definitely love Ryan Murphy. I will say that as far as it's hit or miss, it really is, because I will say on my list of amazing TV shows that I can't stop thinking about, Versace was just the best because it was just done so well that that's just one of those things that is just like, and also everything with Pose, everything with that show, like how that's moved for the LGBTQ community, like that is amazing for me. Also, with RuPaul's Drag Race Canada. You know, a little bias here because I do work for VH1, but I was really happy to see a drag queen named Priyanka who was Indian and from Canada. That for me made me really, really happy as far as Indian representation, because I know it's completely, but that's reality TV. That is a art form that you don't see a lot of Indians in. So it was really I was very excited to see someone named Priyanka in that. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I need to watch Drag Race Canada, because that seems like all the things that I would love. Drag Race Canada, the performing, you know. I think I'd like it a lot. Okay, we got another comment from Movie File saying, great conversation, everyone. And another comment from Zach, going back to our Mindy Kaling, Priyanka Chopra conversation, saying that it looks like an all-Indian cast set as a wedding. Let's hope progression is not just a trend, as you guys mentioned. And then Zach also says, and thank you three again. This was extremely educational, and I hope more conversations like this take place on this quickly becoming favorite podcast.
Look at that.
My heart. This is only the third episode. And you already said it's quickly becoming your favorite. My heart is full. My heart is full. And we'll just do one more comment and we'll wrap it up, because I feel like I've kept you guys on long enough. I knew this was going to be a long episode. Yeah. Because I was like, we got a lot to get into. We got me and Sarita talking, and, you know.
It's dinner time.
Right? Yeah. Zach Pope says, keep it up. Y'all are killing it. So thank you, Zach. Thanks for checking out the podcast this week. Thank you guys so much. We've been talking for like 2 hours, but I appreciate your time. And I hope we can do this again soon sometime.
Thank you so much for having me.
I really appreciate it.
It was great talking to you guys.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, guys. We're gonna end the broadcast now. So see you later.
All right. See ya. Bye, guys.
Bye.